Hello, and welcome to another episode of It's a History podcast. I am your host, Madison, and this week we are going to be looking at the history of honeymoons. As the last episode in this series on weddings, we are going to look at just where this post-nuptial vacation stemmed from. So let's just jump right in. A honeymoon is a vacation that happens just after a couple is married, and our modern celebration stems from the post-wedding tours that many wealthy couples would partake in going back as far as Henry VIII's time. It is reported that Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, his second wife, spent more than a week at Thornsbury Castle to celebrate their wedding. The post-wedding tours of the time would consist of the newlywed couple visiting friends and family that perhaps could not attend the wedding, while some prefer to use the post-wedding time as an opportunity to retreat from society and get to know one another better. If you recall from the History of Weddings episode, for most of human history, marriages were performed not for love, but as a way to transfer wealth, property, and political intrigue. It would not have been uncommon for newlyweds to not really know all that much about one another before tying the knot, which would lead to that post-wedding time period if they did go on a honeymoon or if they did go on a bridal tour, being time that they actually got to know one another. When it comes to honeymoons and our more modern understanding, the rise of the railway really aided in the increase in couples taking a trip after the wedding. With relatively inexpensive fares, a newlywed couple could afford a couple of train tickets to enjoy a trip away from home and enjoy spending time together as a newlywed couple. As one of the more popular honeymoon destinations, Niagara Falls actually developed a slogan, "Honeymoon Capital of the World." Niagara Falls initially gained its honeymoon popularity all the way back in 1801, when Theodosia Burr, the daughter of Aaron Burr, shout out to Hamilton, and her new husband, Joseph Alston, went to the falls as part of their bridal tour. Napoleon Bonaparte's brother, Jerome, also took to Niagara Falls with his new bride just a few years after Theodosia. The falls themselves, having initially been for the wealthy, started to become more popular with all wealth classes as the aforementioned increase in rail and eventually automobile transportation made traveling something more accessible. The falls themselves, having initially been for the wealthy, started to become more popular with all wealth classes as the aforementioned increase in rail and the eventual introduction of automobile transportation, which made traveling something more accessible. In 1881, the falls had started to be used to generate electricity, and I promise this is relevant. And by 1894, there were 7 companies that were operating out of the falls. Between 1906 and 1911, conservationists and honeymooners went head-to-head with the industrialists to protect their beloved Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls famously lies on the border between the US and Canada, and at the time this battle over the falls was happening, Canada and the US were having a squabble over the issue of the falls. Eventually, in 1909, the Boundary Waters Treaty came about with an agreed-upon plan on how to use the water on both sides of the fall. This treaty helped to balance the ever-growing need for hydroelectric power while also making sure to safeguard the unique natural beauty of the falls. It's thanks to those early conservationists and the honeymooners that the beauty of Niagara Falls was preserved. The popularity of Niagara Falls just increased over time, even resulting in a Marilyn Monroe film titled Niagara. Now not as popular as it once was, Niagara Falls is still a destination that some honeymooners choose to travel to. In the middle of the 20th century, after World War II, honeymoon-specific resorts started to pop up, offering newlywed couples a new way to celebrate their nuptials. With all that in mind, what if I told you that honeymoons were older than Henry VIII, taking it all the way back to the 5th century? Now, before you get excited about our 5th century ancestors having a nice vacation after marriage, let me just tell you that these 5th century honeymoons were not all that fun. Brief content warning for the next 30 seconds or so. The 5th century custom is derived from a, quote, marriage by capture, where the groom would kidnap the bride with the intentions of impregnating her without objections from her family. The groom would then hold his bride captive until either the family stopped looking for her or she ended up pregnant. It didn't matter what the outcome was, as if the family stopped looking for her or if she became pregnant, the marriage could not be nullified. Now, as a 21st century woman, I can safely say that I'm glad that is not a customary practice anymore. But where does the term honeymoon come from? Throughout history, the term has traditionally referred to the first month after a couple was married. The term eventually transitioned into referring to the trip that newlywed couples would take. But in its initial entrance into the lexicon, the word honeymoon also comes from the 5th century, In the 5th century, wedding guests would gift the couple a month's worth, in which a month refers to a single moon cycle, of mead. So the very first meaning of the term honeymoon was referring to a month's worth of honey wine. And that is where I'm going to end today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode on honeymoons and these last few weeks on weddings. For those wondering, we went to Maine for our honeymoon. I am recording this well in advance, but I will say that we probably had a really nice time. Sources for today's episode include a brief history of honeymoons and how the post-wedding holiday got its name from History Extra, the history and meaning of the honeymoon traditions by Lily Bloomquist and Sarah Schreiber, and Falling for Niagara Falls, How Did Niagara Falls Become the Honeymoon Capital of the World by Matthew Willis. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, please head over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a review. If you want to email me with any questions, comments, or topic ideas, you can email me at itshistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find me over on Instagram and Threads at It's a History Podcast. I'm pretty active on both. Thank you again, and I hope to have you in the next one. A quick sneak peek into what's coming for those who stay to the end. This series on the rise of fascism in 1930s Germany is coming soon.